Good morning. So, on my way for my first real day at my services, cause when I started, we were doing a hackathon thing, and although it was great fun, it wasn't really a real work day. So now, we'll see what it's like to work at mine. Well, this is my second startup, well, apart from my own startup, of course, but it's gonna be really fun. I think I've had a look at the code base, and it's all in Scala, and they use event-based like development or event-driven development, which is a new concept for me. But I can tell from the code that this is fairly very interesting stuff actually. So I am very excited to try that out. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. So I thought I'd make a short, well, hopefully a short video about cancel tokens or cancellation tokens. Now, what's cancellation tokens? Well, cancellation tokens is a suggested, and I think it's in stage 1 or 2 in JavaScript. So basically, something you may or may not know is that there are cases when you want to cancel a network request or an AJAX call. And for the most part, you haven't been able to really do that in an effective way. And the strongest use case I can think of is when you want to have search suggestions. So let's say that you have a search field, you start typing into that search field, and you start getting suggestions on words based on the letters that you input. That is a really strong use case for being able to use a cancellation token. And basically all a cancellation token is a high-level object API where you instantiate the object and you will get back basically a done function or a cancel function. And you can pass around the actual done function, or you can call a cancel function in order to cancel said promise or said AJAX call, any asynchronicity really. And that's just a high-level explanation of why how this is used. But in the context of search suggest, it's actually very useful, because every time you hit a letter, the user hits a letter, in theory you need to make another network request in order to fetch a better match. So if I want to say that I want to search for cat, I hit the C and I get a list of the 10 top hits for the letter C, and then the user exactly after that, like really quickly inputs A. Then all of a sudden I need to get the words that start with CA, and you can see kind of where I'm going with this. This is not rocket science by any means. But what then happens if there's a slower network connection, or, well, in this case it would be fairly quick to make that search? I mean, it makes sense that you could cancel the first request that just gets the words that start with C. So I think this is a fairly nice addition to the JavaScript syntax, and you probably have heard me talk a little bit about that. I like the simplicity of JavaScript, and for the most part I really don't think that adding, well, this is a nice thing to have, but it's not just a nice thing to have. This is something that can actually improve the language in a fairly, in my opinion, significant way. It's not just like language syntax improvements or fluff that is going to give you a few negligible, or however you pronounce that word, a few low value toys to play with. This actually does, in my opinion, have a lot of sense, especially for, you know, making sure that you're not wasting bandwidth on mobile and a few other things. But yeah, so look at cancellation tokens. They're not in the spec just yet, but you can use Babel to transpile and like use these features ahead of time. Though I I personally don't like that. I'm a conservative when it comes to testing out experimental technology for anything besides my own personal projects, because although it's fun to play around with new tools, I don't like to put, especially if it's production code, I don't like the idea of having experimental features in the code. Well, rather, I will if I've already gone down that route, but if I can avoid it, I try to, because it adds a lot of extra complexity, and if it's not really valuable for me, I don't try to avoid it. However, as I said, this is probably one of the few exceptions to experimental features that I know about that actually makes a bit of sense. So if you're making a search suggestion implementation of some sort, and this is your use case, there you might be able to think of other use cases. This is a really cool thing, so look at cancellation tokens. It might be really useful for you.